Welcome, everybody, to another Microsoft Unboxed podcast. I am your host today, Kareem Anderson, and I'm joined by.
David Allen. I hope everybody's doing well, and I'm going to apologize right here at the get go. I realize my camera's a little dark this week. It looks like I'm having a technical issue. I will try to sort that out by next week. Nothing I can
Yes,
do about it today.
our dark and spooky stranger friend, David, is still the same person, so you'll still get the same sort of information and humor from him, nonetheless, if you can't see him. Um, we are going to be talking about quite a bit, actually, but not most of it focused on Microsoft, surprisingly. Again, they've had a quiet day, but we do know they are hosting an event, I think, as we speak, or they just started about 20, 30 minutes ago. They're celebrating their 50th, and they have some kind of AI um, preview that they wanted to show, something big about Copilot. We will actually update you with that on the site next week because,
Mhm.
again, we don't really work over the weekend. If it's necessary, maybe we might have something later today. You can go check out on the site. If not, you're more than welcome to go stream that. And again, depending on when you listen to this, this happens on Friday at about 12:30. I think it was 9:30 uh, Standard Pacific time. So you let us know. Maybe by the time we finish recording this, you guys will have comments and notes and stuff on the website about whatever that event is. I doubt it's going to have any hardware, but who knows? More Copilot features. With that being said, let me run you down what we're going to be talking about, so you can get in and out of this podcast and be educated for the rest of your weekend. The Surface Book 3 comes to an end. Microsoft finally released its Windows 365 Link Mini PC. Copilot's got some new features. One that will allow you to summarize up to 3,000 pages. I want to test that because I've done some summaries of
I
like
do too.
just a few websites, and it's like, oh, that's all I got for you. OpenAI somehow secured $40 billion worth of funding. It's its highest round of funding to date. So, despite DeepSeek scaring about $1 trillion off of the industry. Somehow, OpenAI told investors to keep pouring money into the black hole that is artificial intelligence. Um, we also got um, AI features finally going to AMD and Intel. The Copilot features that were almost exclusive to Snapdragon will now be supported on those two chipsets, and we'll explain how and why. Amazon versus Starlink, that's becoming a new battlefront for those two companies. And as a secondary, kind of an add-on, we'll also kind of go into Visible by Verizon. And lastly, we have a brief leak at what the UI for Xbox handhelds will look like. And it is actually kind of what we were been talking about for the last few weeks on here. Super simplified, straight to the point, very nice. And it will be coming with touchpad support, according to the leak. And this is all part of a video. So, with that being said, I'm going to let my co host take us to our first story.
All right. I hope everybody's hanging in there, and happy 50th anniversary to Microsoft. We're glad you've been here for 50 years. And speaking of Microsoft, I'm going to jump right into the Surface Book 3 has now reached its end of life. So that's it for Surface Book. And I wrote this because I was a big Surface Book fan. I always thought it was neat to be able to pull the tablet away from the keyboard and have a standalone device. It was not a perfect device. The screen didn't have a kickstand on the back of it. And when you throw that kickstand in there, you look at me and say, "Well, David, you got the Surface Pro," and you would be correct. But I was a big fan at the time of pushing the button and the screen coming off. So I kind of that was a relic for me. I kind of hate to see that one go, but just a reminder that it was launched in 2020 during pandemic time. Maybe that's why we never heard a whole lot about the Surface Book 3. But you won't get any more firmware updates. You can get the Windows updates. You will still get those for the time that they last and the time that they are compatible. But, just a memory, the GPU was a 1650 and a 1660 with the option in the higher end model of the RTX 3000. So that kind of tells you how far we have come, with technology. We were still in the what I would call the 1 series before we went into the 2060, 2070, and 2080. And you guys know what happened from there. But That's it for the Surface Book. No more firmware updates, no more device drivers. You will get your Windows update, so make those last as long as you can. That's it.
Yeah, we were just talking off mic about the uh, evolutionary path of what would have been the Surface Book if they continued with it. It doesn't equate to the Surface Laptop Studio, which everyone would think would be the natural progression. It actually just becomes the Surface Pro. We were saying because the GPU is in the keyboard, if they kind of followed along the path of Apple, where they kept making things thinner, the keyboard thinner, the screen thinner, you wind up with the Surface Pro, because again, the CPU, all of the computing parts, the guts, were in the tablet portion of it, which is kind of what they have with the Surface Pro. So ideally, Microsoft would have went with the Surface Pro that has a 15-inch screen versus what we're hearing about this rumored 12-inch screen. So you make yourself, and you spread things out a little bit more. You have more area surface to cover, which could have helped make the device even thinner than what it currently is. You have the fans on the back still, just kind of like you had on the tablet portion of it. Now, I think where we get held up is the extra battery and the GPUs again that were in the base of in the base of the keyboard. You don't get those with the Surface Pro, but you do get a haptic trackpad, which is something that you got with the Surface Book. So you get a lot of the same feel. You lose the fulcrum hinge or whatnot. But again, the device, as much as I loved it, was ultimately full of compromise. The screen was too heavy to operate without a kickstand. Like, so those of you who have an iPad or a Samsung tablet, that you can hold it. You don't necessarily need to have a kickstand in order to prop it up. You can hold it up with one hand. This one was still too heavy. It was relatively as heavy as the Surface Pro, maybe a little bit heavier. And then the keyboard was just way too heavy because it had battery and it had to power both. It had the fulcrum hinge, which kept it in a very odd design for a lot of people. You got a lot of stuff in between that area between the gap between the screen and the keyboard when it was closed. And then you had software. You had to rely upon software to operate a mechanical hinge, and it wasn't always guaranteed that it would operate smoothly every single time. Now, I'm not saying that it was, that it would lock or freeze every time, or even 10% of the time, but the one time that it does, you're instantly reminded, like, oh, I am subject to the whims of this, overcomplicated system as far as detaching. Now, if you had the Surface Pro, a thing where it's just a bunch of pogo pins essentially, and that thing can detach each and every time and reattach each and every time, and be operated each and every time, that's a little different. So I am sad that it's gone, but I do hope we see a future where we just have enough GPU in these integrated chips to where we can just make the Surface laptop be our dedicated powerhouse, or the Surface Studio gets a little bit thinner. Again, I don't necessarily not like the design, but if they can somehow figure out a way to make that thing a bit thinner, and again, let that be your laptop Surface powerhouse, that would also be nice.
That would be nice. Now, like we talked about off mic, I think we're headed toward that. I'll say advancement, evolution. The word evolution is not what I'm looking for. I think we're headed toward that advancement to where, we're seeing it. If those are familiar with the Asus Z13, and if you've watched any of the YouTube videos about that particular product, it's able to game at 1080p. So if it's able to game at 1080p, then, you're getting a lot of graphics horsepower out of that for your gaming, for your video makers, for your audio editors and your Photoshop editors. So it's possible, and I think we're headed in that direction.
Fingers crossed. We also have uh, the speaking of PCs, we're going to move on to our next topic. We have Windows 365 Link. For those of you who may have been under a rock for the last, I don't know, half year or so, this is the Microsoft PC that is basically a Stream Deck, if I had to call it anything. It has some guts, it has some hardware, but it's basically designed to power your remote desktop. for all intents and purposes. It starts at around 349. It was announced middle of last year, I believe 2024. It's powered by an Intel N250, sorry, processor, which includes about 8 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of UFS storage. It supports dual 4K displays, Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.3. It's fanless and a compact design because, again, it doesn't house very much. Like I said, it's intended to stream. The device streams Windows from the cloud rather than running it locally, and requires a Windows 365 subscription for use. There are no local app installations or offline functionality, so don't even think like, oh, I'll buy it and then I'll use it for something else. It's not even. It's almost functionally designed to counter all of that. It's designed for businesses already using Windows 365 ecosystems, and it's supposed to help IT management a bit easier from a hardware maintenance perspective. No more failing drivers, so to speak. No more incompatible ports, any of that kind of stuff. So, for a lot of people who have dedicated towers but don't do very much outside of the remote desktop or VMware, for whatever business that might find yourself doing, this thing will probably be replacing that eventually. If the company gets some kind of discount from Microsoft. What are your thoughts on having this? I wish this were like Intel powered, or AMD powered, or Qualcomm powered, and actually had guts, because I like the design of this, very simplified. I've always been looking for a Microsoft version. But what are your thoughts on this thin client, so to speak?
Totally agree with everything you just said. I think a lot of PC users, myself included, are looking for the Mac Mini in the PC form factor. And this kind of gives a taste of that. I wish, businesses are going to buy this, and I think, schools are going to possibly purchase it because they're going to, possibly be using desktops in the cloud. Some consumers may pick it up, but the pricing, I looked at it before the pod, the pricing for the Windows 365 remote desktop services, they're a little bit pricey. I mean, they start at $42, $43 a month. That's 4 gigs of RAM, and to get on up to 16 gigs of RAM or so where you can actually do some work, you're looking at, might as well say $100. Um, I like what we're doing. I'm like you. I would love to see it Intel powered. I would love to see the option to do either or, be able to run Windows locally or run Windows remotely,
Mhm.
and let that be some type of toggle. Which do I need? Do I need Windows locally? Do I need it remotely? Or, you know, I thought when this came out and was first announced, I thought about the CrowdStrike issue, where when Windows Remote was down, it was
Mhm.
unusable. So why not have a little hardware in there to be able to flip it back to local and at least be able to handle basic operations? Should there be a cloud outage, and there will be. Nothing against Microsoft. Everybody's going to have an outage sometimes. So good start. I would love to see it go a little further.
Yeah. I mean, that sums that up pretty succinctly. We're going to moving on to the next story, which I believe is yours, which is the Copilot one.
Let's see what we have, folks. We have,
Summarization.
yep, the 3,000 pages that you were talking about. Right before in our headlines, you were talking about the 3,000 page summary, and Copilot now has the ability to summarize up to 3,000 pages in brief, standard, or detailed summaries. So jump in there, check that out. I'm very interested. I'm like you. I want to see what happens here. If you throw a 3,000 page, not that we have a 3,000 page document, but if you throw a 3,000 page document in there, or you throw several documents in there on the same topic, what does it come up with? You know,
Yeah, I'm gonna try this weekend. Maybe you guys can do it along with me. I'm gonna see if I can find the text of a book and see how that summarizes a book that I've read, and I want to see how Copilot compares to my memory of the book, and what details it chooses to highlight and emphasize versus what it kind of glosses over. And maybe I'll write about it, just to kind of have some content on the website. But I'm gonna try and find a book and have it summarized, and then I will put my own summary up actually alongside it, and we'll see Who's better, the human or the computer?
Uh, I'm gonna say 50-50 on this
I was going to
because
say I'm old and my memory's faulty, so that is a downside.
I'm gonna say 50-50 here. Anything's possible. I think Copilot does a pretty good job. I have used Copilot to summarize some reports. Now, I understand that's not the same as a 3,000 page document, but what it has given me when I ask it to do that has actually been pretty good.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to the website hopefully next sometime next week, and I will have that side by side up, and we'll see again who's better, the human or the computer. Next up, we're going to be talking. Speaking of human or computer, we have OpenAI, which wants to computerize everything. These guys are on the cutting edge of AI and raising money for AI. That seems to be the two things that they do pretty well, and the latter being the thing that they do the best. As far as the AI, they got some cool tricks up their sleeve, but getting money and lots of it, it seems to be Sam Altman's like magic. Um, just this week, I want to say on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, it was reported that OpenAI secured about $40 billion in funding, which again, to date, is probably the largest a private tech firm has gotten in investment history. So not just for them alone, but uh, in the industry in general. It was led by Japan's SoftBank Group, which contributed about $30 billion. So they were a huge sum of it. So those of you who are isolationist or nativist, be a little bit worried about how much SoftBank is involved. For the rest of you, don't worry. It doesn't mean very much. Because an additional 10 billion came from a syndicate, including Microsoft, Kaochu Management, Altimeter Capital, and Thrive Capital. The funding structure was about, like I said, about 10 billion provided upfront. The remaining 30 billion contingent on OpenAI's transitioning to a for-profit entity by the end of 2025. So, who knows? The 40 billion was the number that was written on the receipt. Doesn't know if I don't know if that's necessarily the number that will be paid out because again, OpenAI is in the process of becoming for-profit, and I know that Elon Musk is trying to stand in the way of that. So, who knows if he can drag out a court proceeding long enough to inhibit the OpenAI getting its full 30 billion. The strategic goals of this, according to the report, is scaling compute infrastructure, advancing AI research, and delivering tools for the 500 million weekly ChatGPT users. The standard boilerplate, like, hey, we're going to take this money and expand, expand, expand. Now, like I said, some of the transitional issues standing in front of it is mostly becoming divesting from the nonprofit and for the for-profit model, what happens to the research teams and how information is shared across the two entities. Because again, the nonprofit is basically the research arm that provides all of the data and all of the securities for these models. How do they transfer that back into the for-profit section without it being in a conflict of interest? And like I said, the other issue was Elon Musk being a co-founder saying, "Hey, stop it. I want XAI to be better than you." And I have a little bit to say about it. The market valuation now for OpenAI stands at around $300 billion, making it one of the most valuable private companies globally. And it kind of highlights, the growing investors' confidence. Surprisingly, we talked about doom and gloom last month because DeepSeek showed up and said, "Hey, you don't need $30 billion to do what OpenAI does. You need maybe $2 billion, at least on paper, and then however much China subsidizes the rest of it in order to get that." But for whatever reason, investors are still saying, "Hey, I got a hole in my pocket, and I would like to, have that money that's falling out go to OpenAI." Now, this was said and done before Thursday or Wednesday night. We'll see how that changes everybody's calculus going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you kind of jump in right there. What are you thinking about this deal?
Well, it amazes me how these AI companies, and I'm even going to throw Microsoft slightly under the bus here. It amazes me how these AI companies can continue to get all of this money.
I,
Because
I'm thinking the same thing.
that's what I just don't understand. Because we've seen, as you mentioned, that DeepSeek claims that they can do it cheaper, and Apple has claimed that they have ways of doing it cheaper that they have discovered. But yet we keep investors and funding partners are able to just open their wallet and say, okay, OpenAI, have another $40 million and see what you can do. And I feel like OpenAI in some ways is falling a little bit behind. I feel like they're falling a little behind Copilot, and what Microsoft's doing under their own roof. I feel like they're falling behind, Google Gemini. I'm going to be the first to tell you, in my opinion, Google Gemini has, leaped ahead of OpenAI. So I want to know how to start a business like this and just get people to continue to feed me money, because I'm just not seeing how they're doing it, because what return are they producing? That's what I want to know. And I would love to ask an investor the honest question: why do you continue to throw money at this? What return are you seeing, if any? And what are you expecting? Or do you just like the guy and say, "Here, take it"? That's kind of
I mean,
the way I feel.
as the meme always says, why not both?
Yeah,
It's
I
like I
like
said,
that.
it's Sam Altman seems to be a master at separating people from their money. He's a very good magician that way. But
Hmm.
I mean, I think everyone's afraid of the last 20 years of smartphones being available and missing that boat. Nobody wants to be caught with their pants down saying, hey, we missed mobile, which a lot of people did. Surprisingly, as big as the industry is, there are still a lot of businesses that have gone under that, or ones that we don't even talk about in tech history because they missed it altogether.
Hmm.
Microsoft missed it in a big way, but fortunately, they were a software company beforehand. Had they come out or made themselves an entity during the rise of smartphones, they would no longer be here. They were able to pivot pretty well based on the strength of Windows and Office. And now Windows is kind of decaying, and pivoting to the cloud has kind of kept them relevant. But again, they're just, think about the smartphone manufacturers in the US alone that have disappeared, that made their own business smartphones, and they were there at the beginning. So imagine if AI is the next smartphone wave and you were like, yeah, I was hesitant, I didn't jump in, we didn't invest enough, we didn't have infrastructure, we didn't have the partnerships, and it takes off. It's like, all right, well, your company, number 50, and you're not number one, you're not the top two or three that we know of. We're not going to use your services. We're not going to use any of your AI bots or your algorithms or models or anything like that. You start to fall to the wayside. I mean, what else can you, unless your other core business is solid and so far independent from AI that you can't be associated with it. So I get why they are afraid. What I don't understand, to your point, is that it's been 2, 3 years now. At least the smartphones, you can see like, hey, here's how we get money by the device alone. We get people into a leasing situation and we can milk them for money. Then the app store came along and you're like, all right, that is our buy-in. That's where we take this little device that's in their hand, this computer, and we enter into their lifestyles in ways that we couldn't on the PC, on the way that they had a dedicated computer at home that was used by a family that limited their functionality. This thing is personal. It is with them at all times. Advertising, 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 advertising. That is where, are you going to advertise an AI? I mean, where do you see your in at? And like I said, just to your point, I'm questioning it. Now, there are rumors, for those of you who are waking up today from, again, under a rock, that we're going to be in some economic straits, not just here in the US, across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if again, there's a new calculus when it comes to AI. They say, all right, it's great. We're hoping that it's the future, but $40 billion funding rounds now become $20 billion funding rounds, or maybe 10, with the expectation that, hey, you have a 6 months to a year window or runway to produce a quarter of our investment or a third of our investment back, or your next round becomes 1 million or 1 billion, maybe 800 million. I think we're about to see a world where investments in these kind of things start to become
Mm-hmm.
limited, or at least more calculated than just a little gif of the little kid throwing money out the window.
More so than just a checkbook.
Correct. Now, again, all power to OpenAI. I tried their the new image, text to image model that they have. It's really good. It's better than what Copilot offers. So hopefully Copilot gets updated with that. It's not it's better than what Google has, but it's only because Google has finally decided, you know what, we're going to put some limitations on this. I cannot make these type of images based on, a myriad of security reasons or privacy concerns or things like that. Seems like OpenAI was like, hey, we'll make whatever you want, and they do a good job. So make images conscientiously, please. But I would suggest go try them out. Our next topic is Copilot getting AMD and Intel getting the full Copilot experience after, what is it, a year now?
Yeah, about a year. Um, Let me pick this one up as my Outlook closes. Got it back open. Okay, here we go.
No
Sorry,
worries.
folks.
It's okay. I will filibuster while he's getting set up.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
You got it? Okay, go ahead.
Yep, I'm good. It just tried to close on me. Sorry about that. As we know, when the Snapdragon PCs came out,
Okay. It looks like we may have lost him for a second. And like I said, for those of you fortunate enough to still be on this, I am actually going to filibuster based on what he was going to talk about. We had mentioned that the AMD and Intel devices.
wait,
Go ahead. Oh, you're back.
did I disappear?
You did for a second. You were frozen. I was stalling. I hadn't actually got into it. So if you want to go ahead, start from the beginning, start from the top.
Yep, I sure will. As we had mentioned, or you mentioned in the last headline, the Copilot PCs were Snapdragon only when they first came out. We had Co-Creator was out there. We had Paint could do some AI things, and you were able to do those on those NPUs that are in the Qualcomm devices. You couldn't do them on the Intel and AMD devices because at the time they didn't have an NPU, and Microsoft said, "Okay, we're just not going to make it available. We're just not going to do that." But now Microsoft has made that available. You can get those Copilot experiences, such as editing your photos, touching up your photos in Paint. You can do that on your Intel and AMD PCs. Let's see. I had wrote in here the processors that you had to have. I believe you had to have the new Intel and the new AMD chips to be able to do that. So you can't take a 5-year-old PC and say, "Yep, I'm going to do these AI Paint updates." Can't do that. Won't work. So keep in mind to get these, you need a newish PC. It is either the AMD Ryzen AI 300 series or the Intel Core Ultra 200V. And of course, as a reminder, it is available on the Snapdragon X devices via the Pro or the Elite models. So keep in mind, new PCs only. Intel, AMD, and Snapdragon now have access to all the AI goodies in Windows.
Yeah. To simplify it even further, MPUs. When you go into your Best Buy, when you go into wherever you buy your electronics at, if you're doing it online, the AMD and Intel CPU should have listed MPUs, and I think the minimum specs for at least the current Copilot iteration are 40 to 45. So if you see an Intel or an AMD chip that's part of the configuration, look for the MPU as well alongside of that, because that's what powers these Copilot features in specific. So again, you might see a listing that says Intel chip, and it might say 13th, 14th gen. Make sure that you read the MPU minimum spec if you're expecting to play around with these. And again, you might already have one and not even know it. So you'd have to go to your settings and find that out. And then, download the latest update, and you can start playing around with some of these other features that were exclusive to Snapdragon at the launch, but Microsoft and its partners have figured out a way to bring it to everybody, which is great. Because again, these computers with the NPU started coming out last year as well. They just weren't getting the full breadth of the features. With that being said, we're going to move on to another story, which is our first signs of the dedicated Xbox interface for Windows popped up in a preview. We have, sorry, let me get it. There we go. What looks like now for those of you who are listening, picture I don't know what this is, like some generic handheld. Looks like a Switch. So picture what looks like to be the new Switch 2,
Hmm.
device wise, spec wise. But it's got a four box window at the top and a bunch of smaller boxes, all aligned in a single file order. One that just says recent, and another, and the one that says recent are the four large boxes of games. And underneath it just says apps, and it has the Xbox app, Steam, EA, Epic, Riot, and some other dedicated gaming apps, the ones you usually find on your PC in order to launch games. Now, it looks like very simple to us. It looks very straightforward. This is kind of what we've been talking about for the last, I don't know, half a year about what they need to do in order to make the Xbox handheld accessible. It seems like a no-brainer, but for those of you who have not played with Asus Ally, or the Lenovo Legion Go, or the MSI, or any of these PC-enabled versions, not the Steam ones, but PC ones, uh, what you're open when you first open up these devices, you're open up to Windows, full Windows, just a miniature version of this. So it's confusing to be like, all right, where do I go immediately? Do I go to the Microsoft Store? Do I figure out where the game apps is? And then where are my partnering apps? Because you have to automatically download those as well. I mean, not automatically, you have to manually download those. So if you are trying to play an EA game, or League of Legends Riot game, if you're trying to play something on Epic, you have to go to the Microsoft Store, download those apps, and then they show up depending on who provides you a service. So, like Lenovo has an interface that will, sort of simplified, but you need to go manually download the apps for those apps to show up in the interface itself. Same thing with the games. It can be a pain to go through the Xbox Game Pass or the Microsoft Store, or get them from the dedicated websites. It's all, like I said, you're basically just using Windows on a anywhere from a 8 inch, a 7 inch, a 7 inch to 9 inch screen, and you don't have mouse and keyboard support really. You're trying to navigate with a mouse, with a thumbstick. With a thumbstick or the directional pad, and it's a pain. So I'm gonna let you jump in before I give some more details. What are your thoughts, at least just on the initial look of it so far?
I think we're off to a good start. I think this is where we've got to get to, and I have brought this up on a couple pods in the past. Steam Deck does a really good job at this. For where we are in handhelds right now, Steam Deck does a really good job at this. And the Logitech G Cloud does a really good job at this. It's you know, I hate to bring it up, but it's kind of got that Windows 8 look to it a little bit, where we've got the boxes, or what did we call them? Tiles. We call them tiles.
We did.
Um, you've got the tiles in there. So I think Microsoft has got to, and we mentioned this on our last pod, I think, to where you turn these handhelds on and you open up to some type of gaming experience. And we hide Windows as much as possible in the background, maybe with the option as an advanced mode or something to allow people to tweak the settings, because ultimately you are running in the background, but at the same time, we're getting a look at what the first Xbox handheld might be. That the rumors are it's a rebranded ROG Ally. Well, do we want people to be able to get to Windows? I think that's also a question we need to ask. Do we want people to get to Windows? And I'm going to stretch this one step further. If this is a Xbox handheld, what do we want the handheld to do? Do we want the handheld to be your Xbox in your hand? If so, let's pull Windows out as much as possible. Do we want it to be a combo platter? If so, in order to sell it, I think you've got to have something like we're talking about here, with some type of launcher to make it easy for kids and parents and people that are not Windows fans to purchase it. Because when you put the words Xbox handheld on something, you get kids' attention. Yes. You
Mhm.
you you get your kids' attention. You get the parents' attention. Well, there's that thing that we can send them to their bedroom to play on, and they won't be on the bedroom TV. Or there's that thing we can plug into the USB battery in the back seat of the car on our trip. and the kids have got something to play. But if you make the interface challenging to use, you've killed the entire experience. So
No, yeah, I
I
definitely
think
agree.
I think we're in a good place here that if this is what we're going to use, let's do that. But let's also, like your screenshot here is showing, let's also give the ability for an advanced user to drop to Windows and tweak the settings. But I think when you turn it on, it needs to be set easily and in a baseline that most games will operate in.
Yeah, there was a video that accompanies this information we're talking about, and we'll link off to it. Yeah, hopefully, maybe in the show notes or on the website as well as a write up. But and we again, we want to credit Windows Central. This is where
Yes.
we got the information from. That shows that the developers who were tasked with this, I believe, back in 2022, are talking, walking through it. They got inspiration from the Steam Deck. They admit to it in the video as well, so you can see where they kind of get the streamline. Now, the approach to incorporate what David's saying is that it looks like there might be something, and this might be the part that's the co-branding that we're hearing about for these new handheld PCs, where they do, we open into Copilot by using a dedicated button. Now, there was a string of code, I believe, that was reported on that shows that this new launcher will basically open into the full screen experience. That seems to be what's going on. Is that you're going to have the ability to launch your system in this new design, this new layout. But you can also get to Windows, but instead of having to navigate back to the Xbox via the mouse or the thumb pads or the touch, some have touch screens, whatever, you'll be able to just hit this button and it brings back the full launcher again. And you hit the button to go back to Windows. So you'll be able to navigate back and forth between, getting into the nitty gritty of Windows and adjusting all of your gaming settings by pressing this button. And if you give it to a kid and they wandered into Windows, they'll be able to press the button to get back to this launcher that is, again, just games and the dedicated apps for gaming. I think that's a great idea. Again, start off the system, hand it
Mm.
to them. As soon as they press power, it's in the launcher already. And if they wander into Windows, there's an easy hardware dedicated button that gets them back out of there. Instead of saying, all right, well, I'm in Windows and I've screwed some things up and now I don't want to get back to where I need to. And I've actually broken my device. Hit the button, get back to your gaming.
Can I add one thing to that? This is
Of
something we
course.
we talked about this week. For me personally, I'm in the market for a handheld. Um, the purpose for me, which I think would be the purpose for a lot of people, and I know you have mentioned you do some of this yourself, is when you're winding down for the night. You want to pick up that device, whatever it might be, and get in as you mentioned in our conversation, a quick game of NBA 2K25, or you want to play Warzone and play, a few rounds with, your friends just to blow off some steam before you go to bed. Maybe you're doing that on a couch. Maybe you're in an adjustable bed and you're doing it on an adjustable bed and you just want to toss that thing on the nightstand when you're done. And I see this happening with these devices. And if we don't have a way, because you brought up a good point there. What happens when they bork the device? What happens when Windows borks? What happens when you change a graphics setting and you can't get back because the graphics setting wasn't exactly, what you expected it to be? If people have to reset these machines frequently or have to bend over backwards to get back to a baseline that will do the one thing they bought the machine for, just play their game, we have a problem. And I'm thinking back to Game Boy. I'm going back that far. When you put that game in and you turned it on, you had your game. There was no tweaks. There was no, and I would be okay with this being even a no tweak type setup to where, okay, you have a 1080p screen, you're playing a 1080p game, and the device is capable of giving you, if the screen is 60 frames or 120 frames, you can choose 120 or 60. and the game adjusts accordingly. You can't go in and adjust the shader two notches this way, or adjust the graphics quality 2 notches this way. I guess what I'm saying is I think we need a true handheld. That is what it does. That is what it is. And if there's a way to get to Windows for the more advanced features, great. But to your point, there needs to be a button, a reset, something that will get this thing back to its default. Because what's going to happen here is Windows is going to crash. They're going to put it to the side, look at their money that's wasted, and never go buy another handheld. Whereas somebody such as Kareem or myself could pick it up and fix it in a matter of minutes. Parents aren't going to fix it. They don't know how.
Yeah, they're going to rush to the aftermarket for the original Nintendo Switch, which I'm sure are going to be selling like hotcakes these days while everyone gets
Yes.
geared up for the second one. And that leaves the platform altogether away from Microsoft, which is not what they want to do. Now, I know that there are some deals, a partnership with Nintendo over the next, I don't know, 8.5 years, where we'll be seeing more Game Pass games on there. So maybe you do. Maybe you go to the Switch and Microsoft can get you that way. But I know that they would love for their partners to keep licensing Windows to put on those devices where they can then get a Game Pass subscription. It's double dipping. You charge Asus for the license and you get people on the subscription, and you didn't have to make any of the hardware. That's where they want to. That's where they want their bread and butter. But if they have to get you on a subscription from Nintendo, they'll take the second order effect as well. It's enough on that topic. We'll be having a ton to talk about it as far as handhelds. Maybe we'll talk about it as our weekend gaming stuff gets underway a little bit later. But we have one last story, which is kind of a two-parter, and I'm going to let David jump in on that because this is his story, but it's about Amazon and then Verizon. Start with Amazon first.
Well, I brought these stories up, one, because without turning political, I know people are in the market for getting away from Elon Musk, or some people are, and that's your choice, and that's fine. And I know, secondly, the reason I'm putting these together, people are looking broadband options to kind of reflect on our last story. They're looking ways to play. They're looking access. And with the economy looking the way things may be going, they're looking things that are inexpensive. And Amazon, to start this off, is kind of kicking off their Starlink competitor. It is named Project. I'm gonna try to pronounce this the correct way. Kruger. I'm gonna stick. I'm gonna stick with that one.
Okay.
They're Amazon says they can compete with Starlink. Basically, they will be launching their satellites starting next week. April 9th, they say, will be the earliest they will launch those. That'll be the first constellation of satellites that's coming in. And we don't know yet when service will be available, and we don't know the pricing, but Amazon does say they think they can keep the terminals, aka the satellite dishes. They think they can keep those under the $400 mark, which is something for residential and the mini. Starlink has been able to do. I think the residential fluctuates between 349 and 399. And if you live in some states, it's a little cheaper. Don't know why, but it seems to be. And then the mini bounces between 399 and upwards of 499. And Amazon says the mini will be capable of up to 100 megabits of internet service. Um, Less than a pound, fit in your backpack. We don't know yet what the monthly fees will be, and we don't know yet when when it will be available for purchase. I did scour the internet last night pretty heavily because I live in a rural area, and things like this are of interest to me to see how Amazon and Starlink are going to compete. So we don't know yet when you can actually go to Amazon.com and buy this thing. But this is something, at least from my contributions to our website, I'm going to stay on top of and try to grab one of these things when Amazon makes this available and see what the service is like. Secondly, um, again, I know people are looking cheap ways to get access and ways to lower cost. Visible, which is the Verizon, I call it the cheaper brand. It is Verizon owned, Verizon powered. The catch is you don't get the deals on the phones that you do with Verizon. You have to either use your own financing, such as a firm or something like that, or pay for your phone out of pocket. Because remember, when you deal with the big carriers, your phone is often subsidized a little bit inside of your monthly service plan. So that's how we're able to get phones a little cheaper, and we're able to work out payment plans. Visible is a month to month. They have 3 plans, and they have a brand new plan called, Visible Pro Plus. What that is done, you get the unlimited 5G, which is the ultra wideband, the good, what I call the good stuff. That'll usually get you a few hundred megs of speed. You get the unlimited data on the phone, and you get unlimited hotspot, but they have put a 15 megabit per second cap on that for most people on the go. 15 meg is not quick. You're not really going to be downloading files, but it's enough to get in there and check your email. You're looking at around $45 a month for that plan. You get 1080p video streaming. That is the fastest Whoop, I said that wrong. You get 4K video streaming on the Visible Plus Pro plan, and the Visible Plus plan has been upgraded to 1080p and a faster hotspot at 10 meg and unlimited 5G data on your device. I know that's a little bit confusing to hear me rattle that off. It's on the website, but if you're looking an inexpensive cell phone plan or a way to get some data on the go without spending a lot of money, it's worth looking into if you're trust the Verizon network or you're in Verizon's territory. Pretty good offering there.
Yeah, this reminds me of the Lexus Toyota thing, where Lexus is the expensive brand, even though Toyota makes it, and Toyota is the cheaper everyday car for everybody. It seems like Verizon's pulling hey, if you have privilege, you can get our crazy Verizon plans. If you don't, then get the Visible and get roughly the same sort of experience just for anywhere from $30 to $40 cheaper. So I'm all for it. Like I said, we will see how the world turns in the next few months. We may all be looking for Visible plans coming up soon.
We may be.
With that being said, that brings us to the end of our news headline section of the podcast. Why don't you let people know what you're getting into this weekend? What are your plans?
Well, I'm in North Carolina for those that want to know. This is kind of the first summer weekend here. We're actually getting a little hot stretch here. Highs 85, 90 degrees, warm enough to get out and have a good time. So I'm going to spend a little time outside, but of course, can't be, I'm not going to be outside all the time. So I'm going to slide in this weekend. And Veridesk, for those Call of Duty players, Veridesk was a very popular map in Warzone that they have brought back. They brought it back on the 3rd. I'm going to jump in there and see if I can get a few Veridesk rounds, at least give people something to laugh at. College football 25, for those that are also interested, made its way to Game Pass this week. I know the college football season is over, but that's a very active game still. Pretty good game there. I may jump in there and try to get a few rounds of college football. Other than that, I may be laying on the couch enjoying the air conditioning. What about you? What are you up to this weekend? I know you've been out of town a little bit these last couple of weeks, been a little busy. What are you up to?
Yeah, I will probably be indoors. Surprisingly, my girls are away. They have Girl Scout camp. Wife is with them, so it'll just be me being a hermit. I will be playing some games.
What he's telling you there is bachelor pad. He's playing games.
Yeah, definitely. And as a bachelor, that's what I did anyway. I didn't go out, I didn't drink, I didn't do anything. I played games. So I'll be playing.
I did too.
I'll be playing Marvel Rivals. I'll be playing NBA 2K25. I'll also be catching the end of March Madness. We're on our our final weekend, ladies and gentlemen. So if your board is still intact, I'm sure you're owed hundreds of dollars for whatever fantasy league you were in, whichever March Madness draft you were in. If you aren't, just get wasted and have a good time watching some really talented people play some basketball, eat some bratwurst or whatever you can. I'll be reading some comics as well. I was at a WonderCon panel last weekend, and we talked about some interesting stuff. But like I said, I'll be filling my days with food, games, and comics for the weekend. I do have a volleyball game that my girls will be back in Sunday. So the next two, at least tonight and tomorrow, that's what I'm at. Where can people find you if they want to join you in playing video games or at least watch some of your madness?
Watch some of my madness, man. You said that perfectly. Sometimes watching me play video games is madness. Um, which reminds me, folks, I know I mentioned it several weeks ago. I need to get my butt on that Twitch channel here for the website so you guys can laugh and comment, enjoy some of my madness in real time. But until then, David PAJ 1978, I will be hanging out on Blue Sky, Twitter, not so much. Facebook threads once in a while. David PAJ 1978. There's a good group of gamers over there. I kind of fell in a little group, and kind of how the algorithms work. I'm kind of seeing some of the same people and getting a few replies on some of my messages. So it's a good little group I've over there. If you've not tried Blue Sky, if you're a gamer or content creator, I'm actually found a social media network that I hate to say it, I kind of like it. But
Yeah.
what about you? Where are you hanging
I'm Happy Hulk because I'm a fan of the Incredible Hulk, which is why I put it on everything at Blue Sky. As just like you, I'm a fan of the social media network that is Blue Sky. I do talk politics there, but I talk mostly about gaming and comics in a big way. And I found some really interesting communities there. Also great for people who do podcasting or Substacks. So if you want to get informed or information about something very niche or very specific to your interest, it seems to be a good place to find stuff. And their pre-made list are a great way to get started. I think that's one of their greatest selling points for Blue Sky is the pre-made list. I do creep on Threads the same way I do Instagram. There's some good things you can find on those two platforms, but I'm not on there routinely. You can also go to our website to again read our articles, make some comments in the article sections. We'll respond to them as quickly as we can. You can go to YouTube, add comments there on any of these podcasts or shorts that you find interesting, or have anything that you'd like to add to it, or information that or context that we might have missed in our reporting. And you can also find the Microsoft Unboxed podcast on TikTok as well. So go to all those places. If not, just go outside, touch some grass, have some fun. It seems to be decent weather, at least here on the southeast. I know that the Midwest is supposed to have some storms, if I'm not mistaken. So for those of you in the storm's path, be safe, be careful. Those of you on the West Coast, if you're on the West Coast, you guys already have great weather. So enjoy it while you can. We will see you guys next week. Thank you for spending some time with us.
at? Have a good weekend, folks. Thanks for your time.
We call connections made through every hall. Azure skies where spirits stall. In the cloud we